The discovery. The storm raged across the barren landscape of the planet Zoreth 7, a desolate world that seemed to have been abandoned for millennia. Dr. Elaine Carter, a renowned space archaeologist, stood at the edge of an ancient ruin, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and fear. This was what she lived for: uncharted worlds and untold mysteries. Her team of 5 worked tirelessly behind her, setting up lights and scanning equipment. The ruins were unlike anything they had ever seen. Towering stone pillars etched with glowing symbols, pulsating faintly like a heartbeat. The wind howled through the broken structures, carrying an eerie whisper that sent shivers down their spines. "Dr. Carter, you need to see this," called Sam, her lead technician, his voice trembling with a mix of awe and terror. Elaine rushed to the site where Sam was standing, a large circular platform, partially buried under layers of sand and debris. At its center was a pedestal, and on it rested an object that immediately caught her eye: a blade. It wasn't just any blade. The weapon seemed alive, its metallic surface shifting as though it were breathing. A faint glow emanated from the hilt, casting strange shadows on the ground. Symbols carved into the blade shimmered, changing patterns as Elaine approached. "Is that a weapon?" asked Maria, the team's linguist, her voice barely a whisper. "It's more than a weapon," Elaine said, her gaze fixed on the artifact. This is a piece of history." Sam scanned the blade with his handheld device, but the readings made no sense. It's emitting energy levels off the charts. But it's not radioactive, not metallic, not anything we know. Elaine reached out, her hand trembling. "Be careful, Doctor," Sam warned, stepping back. The pedestal bore an inscription in an ancient alien language. Maria squinted at it, her translator device working overtime. It says, "No creature shall wield this blade without paying the ultimate price." The words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. The team exchanged uneasy glances, but Elaine didn't hesitate. Her curiosity outweighed her fear. She had spent her entire life chasing the unknown, and now it was right in front of her. As her fingers brushed the blade's surface, a cold surge shot through her arm. For a moment, everything went silent. The storm, the whispers, even her team's worried murmurs. Then the ground beneath her trembled. The glowing symbols on the ruins flared to life, lighting up the dark landscape in an eerie blue hue. "Dr. Carter," Sam shouted, pulling her back, but she couldn't move. The blade had fused to her hand, and visions flooded her mind. She saw alien cities rising and falling, colossal wars fought in the void of space, and civilizations wiped out in an instant. A voice echoed in her head, deep and otherworldly. "You are not worthy, yet." Elaine gasped and fell to her knees, the visions vanishing as quickly as they had come. The blade slipped from her hand, clattering onto the pedestal as though nothing had happened. "What the hell was that?" Maria whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Elaine sat back, catching her breath. "It's alive," she said. "It's not just a weapon. It's a key. But to what?" Sam was already scanning the ruins again. Whatever it is, it activated the entire structure. These readings. This place was dead for thousands of years, and now it's waking up. Maria stepped closer, hesitant. "Dr. Carter, why didn't it harm you?" The inscription. "No creature shall wield it. What makes you different?" Elaine didn't have an answer, but she could feel it. The blade had chosen her, or at least tolerated her. Why? She didn't know, but she was determined to find out. Before anyone could say more, a distant rumble shook the ground. The team froze, their lights flickering. From the shadows of the ruins emerged a figure, tall, skeletal, and covered in ancient armor. Its eyes glowed the same eerie blue as the blade. Dr. Carter," Sam stammered, backing away. "I think we woke something up." Elaine stood, her gaze fixed on the figure. It didn't move, but its presence was overwhelming. Then, As if responding to an unspoken command, the blade on the pedestal lifted into the air, spinning slowly before pointing directly at Elaine. The figure stepped closer, its voice a guttural growl that echoed through the ruins. "The wielder has been found." Elaine's heart raced. She didn't know what she had unleashed. But one thing was clear. This was only the beginning. The history of the blade, the alien wars, and the blade's curse. The blade lay silently on the pedestal, its glow pulsing faintly in sync with Elaine's heartbeat. Despite the chaos around her, she couldn't shake the feeling that the weapon was watching her, waiting. The storm outside intensified, but the ruins seemed untouched by the howling winds and sand. Elaine and her team had retreated to the inner chambers of the ancient structure, their nerves raw from the encounter with the armored figure. Sam worked frantically on his scanner, trying to decipher the energy surges around them. Maria sat nearby, her translator device attempting to decode the alien inscriptions lining the walls. "Dr. Carter," Maria called, her voice shaking. "These symbols, they're not just warnings. They're a story." Elaine moved closer, her curiosity rekindled. "What kind of story?" Maria hesitated, scrolling through the translated text. "It speaks of a race called the Elithar. They were once rulers of a vast galactic empire. This blade, they called it Xironis, the key of eternity. They created it as a weapon to end a war that nearly destroyed their kind." Elaine's eyes narrowed. "What kind of war?" Maria glanced at the glowing carvings on the walls. The Elithar fought a species known as the Vorak. They were unstoppable, consuming planets, devouring civilizations. The Elithar, desperate, turned to their greatest scientists and mystics. They forged a Xironis from a star's core and infused it with their most powerful technology. And something else. Sam looked up from his scanner. "Something else. What does that mean?" Maria swallowed hard. The blade wasn't just a weapon. It was alive. The Elithar believed they could control it, but they were wrong. It turned on them, consuming the minds of those who tried to wield it. Entire armies fell because of the blade's influence. Elaine studied the inscriptions carefully. Then why keep it? Why not destroy it? Maria pointed to a section of the wall where the carvings became jagged, almost frantic. The Elithar realized the blade was more than a weapon. It was a key, something that could unlock something else. The Vorak feared it, but they also sought it. The Elithar couldn't risk destroying it and unleashing whatever was locked away. Elaine's mind raced. A key to what? Was the blade a safeguard or a doorway to something far worse? Before anyone could speak further, the pedestal in the center of the chamber began to glow brighter. The blade hovered again, spinning slowly. The light from its surface reflected off the walls, illuminating symbols that had remained hidden until now. Maria's translator buzzed to life, displaying a single chilling phrase. "The worthy shall awaken the end." Sam stumbled backward. I'm starting to think we shouldn't be here." Elaine ignored him, stepping closer to the glowing blade. Her hand reached out instinctively, but this time, as her fingers neared it, she felt a wave of heat and cold at the same time. A voice, deep, ancient, and filled with both rage and sorrow, echoed in her mind. "You seek answers, human, but the truth will cost you everything." Suddenly, the room around them dissolved into darkness. Elaine blinked, trying to orient herself, but her team was gone. The ruins vanished, replaced by a vast, star-filled void. In the distance, she saw colossal figures locked in battle, beings of light and shadow, their movements shaking the very fabric of space. She realized she was witnessing the war. The Vorak were monstrous, shape-shifting creatures, their bodies absorbing light and energy as they attacked. The Elithar, elegant and radiant, wielded weapons that shimmered with the power of galaxies. At the center of the chaos was the blade, its glow blinding as it tore through both armies indiscriminately. Elaine's vision shifted to an Elithar council chamber, where desperate voices echoed. "We cannot control it," one shouted. "It hungers for more than power. It hungers for will." Another Elithar, their face obscured by light, spoke solemnly. "Then we shall seal it. The key must not fall into unworthy hands. If it awakens again, it will decide the fate of all creation." The scene shifted again. Elaine saw the blade being placed on the pedestal, surrounded by an army of Elithar warriors. But as the final barrier was erected, she noticed something chilling. The Vorak had not been destroyed. Instead, they had been locked away, sealed in a prison beyond time, their freedom tied to the blade. The voice echoed again, pulling Elaine out of the vision. "You cannot unsee what has been seen. Choose wisely, human. The blade serves no one, and yet it chooses all." Elaine gasped, collapsing to her knees as the vision ended. She was back in the chamber, her team staring at her in confusion. "Dr. Carter?" Maria asked cautiously. "Are you okay?" Elaine looked at the blade, now lying motionless on the pedestal. She knew what it was now: a weapon, a key, and a curse. The Elithar hadn't created it to win the war. They had created it to contain the Vorak. "We're in over our heads," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This isn't just history. This is a warning." Before anyone could respond, a deep rumble shook the chamber. The light from the blade flickered, and the glowing carvings dimmed. Something was stirring, something that had been dormant for eons. Sam grabbed his scanner, his face pale. Doc, the energy readings just spiked. I think we triggered something." Elaine stood, her resolve hardening. "We need to leave. Now." But as they turned to exit, the shadows in the ruins began to shift, and a chilling, inhuman voice echoed through the chamber. "The blade has chosen. The prison shall break. The trials begin. Unlocking the blade's secrets." The air in the chamber was thick with an unexplainable tension. The blade sat dormant on its pedestal, but Elaine could feel it, an invisible force tethering it to her, drawing her closer to its purpose. The storm outside had settled into an eerie silence, as if the entire planet held its breath. Sam broke the silence, his voice shaky. "Dr. Carter, this thing, it's not just a relic. It's a beacon. The energy signatures. It's like it's calling out to something, or someone." Elaine didn't respond. Her focus was on the blade and the carvings around the room. Each symbol seemed to glow faintly now, forming a pattern she hadn't noticed before. It wasn't random. It was a map. "What is it showing us?" Maria asked, stepping cautiously to Elaine's side. Elaine traced the symbols with her finger, her mind racing. "It's leading somewhere. A path. But not just through this ruin, through trials. Tests." Sam groaned. "Tests. Great, because ancient alien death traps are exactly what we signed up for." Before anyone could protest further, the pedestal beneath the blade began to shift. The ground trembled as the chamber rearranged itself. Walls moved like clockwork gears, opening passages that hadn't existed moments before. The blade levitated once more, pointing toward a newly revealed doorway. Elaine stepped forward, her breath catching in her throat. "This is it," she said softly. "The blade isn't just a key, it's a guide." Maria frowned, her unease palpable. A guide to what? Elaine didn't answer. She was already moving toward the doorway, her curiosity outweighing her fear. The others hesitated but eventually followed. The corridor beyond was lined with alien inscriptions that seemed to ripple as they passed, like water disturbed by an unseen force. As they walked deeper, the temperature dropped. The air felt heavier, pressing against their lungs. Then they reached it, the first trial. The room was vast, its ceiling stretching so high that it disappeared into darkness. At the center was a massive platform, suspended over a bottomless pit. On the platform stood an intricate puzzle, a grid of glowing tiles, each marked with alien symbols. On the far side of the room, a second doorway awaited, shrouded in a faint blue light. Sam whistled low. Let me guess. We have to solve the puzzle to cross. Elaine nodded, stepping onto the platform. The moment her foot touched the tiles, the symbols shifted, rearranging themselves. A disembodied voice echoed through the chamber, cold and mechanical. Prove your worth, step wrong, and face oblivion. Maria paled. That's comforting. Elaine studied the grid, her mind racing. The symbols weren't random. They matched the carvings from the chamber above. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, landing on a tile that glowed softly beneath her feet. The platform stabilized. Okay, she said, one step at a time. The teen watched anxiously as she moved across the grid, each step calculated. But halfway through, the blade's glow intensified, flooding the room with light. The symbols on the tiles began to shift rapidly, changing positions. The platform beneath them trembled. Elaine, Sam shouted. It's moving. What now? Elaine froze, her mind racing. The shifting symbols were impossible to follow. But then she felt it. A faint pulse in her chest, sensing with the blade. It was guiding her, whispering the right path in her mind. Trust me, she said, her voice steady. She stepped onto another tile, and the platform stabilized again. Trust you, Sam barked. That thing is messing with you. How do you know it's not leading us to our deaths? Elaine didn't answer. She moved forward, each step guided by the blade's pulse. The others followed hesitantly, trusting her instincts, or perhaps the blade's control. They reached the final tile, and the second doorway opened with a hiss. The platform behind them collapsed, falling into the abyss. There was no turning back now. The next chamber was smaller but no less ominous. A circular pool of liquid metal shimmered in the center, its surface unnaturally still. Above it floated a holographic projection, a map of the galaxy, with countless stars marked in red. At the center of the projection was a single, glowing symbol, the same symbol etched onto the blade. Maria studied the map, her voice trembling. These red stars, they're all dead systems. Entire civilizations wiped out. Elaine stared at the glowing symbol. This is what the blade is connected to. It's not just a weapon or a key. It's a part of something much larger. Before she could say more, the liquid metal rippled, rising into the form of a humanoid figure. Its voice was cold, devoid of emotion. You have passed the first trial, but the path ahead will test not just your mind, but your soul. Do you accept the burden of truth? Elaine's heart raced. What truth? The figure tilted its head, its featureless face unreadable. The truth of what you are, and what you must become. The chamber began to tremble, the walls splitting open to reveal yet another passage. Elaine tightened her grip on the blade, her resolve hardening. We keep moving, she said, stepping toward the new doorway. Sam grabbed her arm. Elaine, this isn't just an adventure anymore. This thing, it's playing us. Elaine pulled free, her voice firm. No, it's testing us, and I'm not stopping until I know why. The team hesitated but ultimately followed her into the unknown. The trials had only begun, and the secrets of the blade were far from fully revealed. Enemies awakened. The silence was deafening as Elaine and her team emerged from the passageway. The air was different here, heavier, almost alive with energy. The dimly lit chamber before them felt ancient and untouched, with walls lined in shimmering black obsidian. Carvings pulsed faintly, as if alive, casting a ghostly glow that painted the room in shifting shadows. Sam stopped short, his scanner buzzing uncontrollably. Something's wrong, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The energy levels, they're spiking. This place isn't dormant. It's waiting. Maria shuddered, gripping her translator tightly. Waiting for what? Elaine stepped forward, her eyes drawn to the center of the chamber where an altar stood, its surface smooth and gleaming. Hovering above it was a crystal sphere, crackling faintly with an energy that seemed to ripple through the room. The blade in Elaine's hand hummed softly, resonating with the sphere, as if recognizing an old friend or foe. "I don't think we're alone anymore," Elaine murmured, her voice tinged with unease. Before anyone could respond, the floor beneath them trembled. A low guttural sound echoed through the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. From the shadows, shapes began to emerge, hulking, humanoid figures clad in ancient armor that gleamed with a metallic sheen. Their eyes glowed with the same blue energy as the blade, and their movements were slow but deliberate. Maria gasped, taking a step back. What are they?" Elaine's grip on the blade tightened. "Guardians," she said, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her chest. "They were left here to protect the blade, and whatever it's connected to." One of the guardians stepped forward, towering over them. Its voice was deep and mechanical, each word reverberating through the chamber. "The wielder has been chosen, but the unworthy must perish." Sam's eyes widened. Does that mean us?" Before anyone could answer, the guardians charged. Their movements were slow, but their sheer size and strength were terrifying. One swung its massive arm, narrowly missing Sam as he dove out of the way. Another lunged at Maria, its glowing eyes locked onto her, but Elaine intercepted it, the blade in her hand surging with light. The moment the blade connected with the guardian's armor, it let out a deafening roar. The energy from the blade pulsed through its body, forcing it to stagger back. Elaine's arms trembled from the impact, but she held her ground. "They're linked to the blade," she shouted, dodging another strike. "It's the only thing that can stop them." Maria scrambled behind a pillar, her voice shaking. "Great, so we just need to keep them distracted while you figure out how to use it." Elaine didn't answer. Her focus was on the guardians, each one moving with relentless purpose. The blade's hum grew louder, its glow intensifying, as if feeding off the conflict. But with each swing, Elaine could feel it draining her, as if the blade demanded more than just physical strength. It demanded her very essence. Sam, armed only with a small plasma cutter, shouted from across the room. Dr. Carter. Not to be a downer, but there's more of them coming." Elaine glanced toward the far side of the chamber, where more guardians were emerging from the walls. She realized they were outnumbered, and the blade, powerful as it was, couldn't protect them forever. "Fall back," she shouted, waving her team toward the far doorway. "We can't take them all." As they sprinted toward the exit, the guardians closed in, their steps shaking the ground. Elaine turned to face them, holding the blade aloft. Its light flared brightly, creating a barrier of energy that held the creatures back just long enough for her team to escape. The moment Elaine crossed the threshold of the doorway, the guardians stopped. They stood motionless, their glowing eyes fixed on her, as if bound by an invisible line they could not cross. Sam collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. What just happened?" Maria clutched her translator, her hands shaking. "They stopped." "Why did they stop?" Elaine leaned against the blade, her strength nearly gone. "They're bound to the chamber," she said, her voice strained. "Their purpose is to protect the blade, and whatever lies beyond." Sam shook his head. "This is insane. We've got killer robots, a blade that's trying to suck the life out of you, and a glowing crystal sphere that looks like it could blow us all to hell. Why are we even still here?" Elaine straightened, her resolve hardening. "Because this isn't just about the blade. It's about what it's guarding. The Elithar created this for a reason, and we need to understand what that is before it's too late." Maria frowned. "Too late for what?" Elaine didn't answer. Instead, she turned back toward the path ahead, where faint blue light illuminated another passageway. The blade pulsed softly in her hand, as if urging her forward. "This isn't just a weapon," she said. "It's a test, and I'm starting to think it's not just testing me. It's testing us. Humanity." Sam groaned. "Fantastic. Humanity's survival rests on your shoulders. No pressure." Elaine smirked faintly, but her expression quickly turned serious. We're not done yet. Let's move. The team pressed on, the echoes of the Guardians' mechanical growls fading behind them. But Elaine couldn't shake the feeling that their escape was only temporary. The Guardians weren't the end of this journey. They were just the beginning. A betrayal within the air grew colder as the team ventured deeper into the labyrinth of ancient corridors. The blade, now a constant presence in Elaine's hand, hummed faintly, its glow casting long shadows on the walls. Each step felt heavier, the weight of their journey pressing down on them. Sam wiped sweat from his brow, despite the chill. I don't know about you guys, but I'm starting to think this whole thing was a bad idea. Maria shot him a sharp glance. You've been saying that since we got here. Maybe try being helpful for a change. Elaine ignored their bickering, her eyes scanning the symbols carved into the walls. They told a story, one of creation, destruction, and something more sinister. The further they went, the clearer it became that the blade wasn't just a relic of war. It was part of something much larger, something alive. Elaine, Maria called, interrupting her thoughts. These carvings, they've changed. They're warning us now. Elaine stopped, studying the symbols. The glowing carvings depicted figures much like the Guardians they had encountered earlier, but now they were shown kneeling before a massive, shadowy entity. The figure wielding the blade stood in the center, their face obscured, their actions unclear. What does it say? Elaine asked, her voice quiet. Maria hesitated. It's fragmented, but it keeps repeating one phrase. The chosen will betray. Sam let out a low whistle. Well, that's reassuring. Elaine turned away, her jaw tight. The blade's hum grew louder, almost as if it were reacting to the warning. She couldn't shake the feeling that the carvings weren't just a relic of the past. They were a glimpse of what was to come. As the group pressed on, the passage widened into a massive chamber. In its center was a console, ancient and alien, its surface alive with shifting patterns of light. The walls shimmered with holographic images, showing the Vorak, the monstrous race sealed away long ago, devouring entire planets. The images flickered, replaced by others, fleets of ships, shattered worlds, and the blade at the center of it all. This is a control room, Maria whispered, awe and fear in her voice. It's connected to the prison. The Vorak's prison. Sam tapped the console cautiously. So, what happens if we, push the wrong button? Elaine stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the console. The blade pulsed in her hand, guiding her movements. We're not here to push buttons, she said. We're here to understand. But before she could act, a voice cut through the chamber, sharp and unfamiliar. Not all of us, Dr. Carter. Elaine froze, turning to see Sam standing several feet away, a small device in his hand. His usual nervous demeanor was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. The rest of the team stared in shock. Sam, what are you doing? Maria demanded, her voice shaking. He smiled faintly, his grip tightening on the device. What I was sent here to do. You think this expedition was about archaeology, about discovery. Please, this blade is the key to unlocking power beyond anything humanity has ever seen, and I'm not letting you waste it. Elaine's heart sank. You've been working for someone. Who? Sam chuckled. Let's just say there are people out there who understand the value of this artifact. People who don't share your moral hang-ups. Maria stepped forward, her fists clenched. You're going to sell it, after everything we've been through, after people died for this. It's not selling, Sam said, his tone dismissive. It's leveraging. Do you have any idea what this blade could do in the right hands, or the wrong ones? His gaze flickered to Elaine. But you just want to bury it again, like the Elithar did. That's not progress. That's fear. Elaine's grip on the blade tightened. You don't know what you're dealing with, Sam. This isn't just a weapon. It's alive. And it's dangerous. He smirked. Then maybe you're not the one who should be holding it. Before anyone could react, Sam pressed a button on his device. The chamber trembled as the console came to life, its lights flashing wildly. The holographic images on the walls shifted, showing the Vorak breaking free from their prison. Their monstrous forms loomed over entire galaxies, consuming everything in their path. Maria shouted, "What did you do?" Sam stepped back, the device still in his hand. "I'm unlocking its full potential. You don't get to decide the fate of humanity, Elaine. That's above your pay grade." Elaine felt the blade's hum grow sharper, almost like a scream. She realized it wasn't just reacting to the console, it was reacting to Sam. The blade pulsed with a warning, its glow intensifying, as if it sensed betrayal. "Sam, stop this," Elaine said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "You don't understand what you're unleashing." But Sam only smiled. "That's the difference between us, Doctor. You're afraid of what's out there. I'm not." Before he could say more, the chamber shook violently. The console's lights dimmed, and a deep guttural roar echoed through the room. From the shadows, figures began to emerge. Guardians, but these were different. Their forms were larger, more grotesque, their eyes glowing a fiery red instead of blue. Maria's voice was barely a whisper. What are those?" Sam paled, his confidence faltering. "That wasn't supposed to happen." Elaine stepped forward, the blade in her hand glowing brighter than ever. "You don't control this, Sam. None of us do." The Guardians advanced, their movements swift and menacing. Sam dropped his device, his hands trembling. "Elaine, do something. Stop them." Elaine didn't answer. She raised the blade, its light flaring to life. The Guardians paused, their glowing eyes fixed on her. For a moment, the room was silent, the tension thick enough to cut. Then the largest Guardian stepped forward, its voice a deep growl. "The chosen must decide. Protect the key, or destroy the unworthy." Elaine's eyes locked with the Guardians. The blade's glow surged, and she realized the choice wasn't just about the Guardians. It was about Sam, about humanity, about the path she would take. Her decision would shape the fate of the galaxy. The blade's power unleashed, the chamber pulsed with energy, the walls alive with shifting patterns of light. Elaine stood at the center, the blade in her hand radiating a searing brilliance that seemed to defy the darkness around her. The Guardians had paused, their glowing eyes fixed on her, waiting for her next move. The air was thick with tension, every breath Elaine took feeling like it carried the weight of 1,000 choices. Sam was crouched against the wall, his face pale and his bravado gone. Maria and the others stood frozen, their eyes darting between the Guardians and Elaine, unsure of what would happen next. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the chamber. It wasn't from the Guardians, it was from the blade itself. "The wielder must decide. Power demands sacrifice." Elaine's heart pounded. The blade's voice was unlike anything she had ever heard, ancient, commanding, and utterly inhuman. It wasn't just a tool, it was a force, a consciousness. And it was speaking directly to her. What sacrifice?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The blade flared brighter, and the room shifted. In an instant, the others were gone. Elaine found herself standing alone in a vast, star-filled void. Planets and galaxies swirled around her, their beauty marred by flashes of destruction. Worlds consumed, civilizations obliterated. At the center of it all was the Vorak, monstrous and infinite, their forms devouring light and life alike. The voice spoke again, louder this time. "The Vorak stir. The key awakens them. Only the blade's wielder can contain their hunger, or unleash it." Elaine turned, and before her appeared the Elithar, or what was left of them. They were luminous beings, their forms fractured and flickering like dying stars. One stepped forward, its voice tinged with sorrow. "We forged the blade to save our kind," it said, "but we underestimated its cost. It feeds on will, on life itself. It is both salvation and destruction. Choose wisely, human. Your choice will echo through eternity. Elaine's mind raced. The visions weren't just warnings. They were truths. The Vorak weren't fully imprisoned. They were stirring, their hunger growing. And the blade was the key to everything. It could seal them away forever, but at a price. Or it could unleash them, giving humanity a chance to fight. But at what cost? The void dissolved, and Elaine was back in the chamber. The guardians stood motionless, their eyes flickering as if they too awaited her decision. The blade in her hand vibrated violently, its light pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Elaine, Maria's voice broke through the tension, soft but pleading. What's happening? What do we do? Elaine didn't respond immediately. Her eyes locked with Sam's, who was still slumped against the wall. He looked broken, his earlier betrayal eclipsed by sheer terror. You knew, she said, her voice cold. You knew the blade was dangerous, and you still tried to use it. Sam shook his head, his voice trembling. I didn't know it would be this. I thought we could control it. Elaine stepped closer, the blade's glow casting harsh shadows across his face. No one controls it. It controls us. The guardians shifted, their glowing eyes narrowing. The largest one stepped forward, its voice a deep rumble. The decision must be made. Seal the Vorak, or unleash their prison. Choose, or the blade will choose for you. Maria's voice trembled. Seal them. Isn't that the only choice, if we unleash them? Sam interrupted, his voice desperate. If we seal them, we lose everything. Don't you see? The Vorak are terrifying, but they're part of the universe. If we unleash them, we might find a way to defeat them, to evolve. Elaine shook her head. At what cost? Millions, no, billions of lives could be lost. And if we seal them? Sam countered. The blade feeds on you, Elaine, on your will. What happens when it takes everything from you? What happens when no one is left to wield it? The words struck her like a blow. He was right. The blade was draining her, taking pieces of her with every moment she held it. Sealing the Vorak would mean binding herself to the blade's power forever. But unleashing them, it was chaos, destruction, and hope all at once. The blade pulsed again, brighter than ever. The guardians moved closer, their forms shimmering with energy. Decide, the voice commanded. The balance depends on you. Elaine closed her eyes, the weight of the universe pressing down on her. Every instinct screamed at her to seal the Vorak, to end their threat once and for all. But deep down, she knew the truth. No prison was eternal. One day, they would escape. And when they did, humanity might not be ready. Her grip tightened on the blade as she made her choice. I'm not sealing them, she said, her voice steady. I'm unleashing them. Maria gasped. Elaine, no, you can't. But it was too late. The blade erupted in a blinding flash of light, and the chamber trembled violently. The guardians roared in unison, their forms dissolving into streams of energy that flowed into the blade. The console lit up, the symbols shifting into a pattern Elaine had never seen before. The voice spoke one last time, softer now, almost approving. You have chosen. The blade's burden is now yours. Let humanity prove its worth, or perish. As the light faded, the chamber fell silent. The guardians were gone. The blade, still pulsing with power, felt heavier in Elaine's hand. Maria and Sam stared at her, their faces a mixture of fear and disbelief. What have you done? Maria whispered. Elaine turned to them, her expression unreadable. I gave us a chance, she said. Now we fight. In the distance, a deep guttural roar echoed through the ruins. The Vorak were awake. The final reckoning. The Vorak were awake. Their roars echoed across the barren landscape, shaking the very ground beneath Elaine's feet. From the ruins, streaks of black and crimson light pierced the sky, as if the planet itself was crying out in terror. Elaine stood at the heart of the storm, the blade in her hand burning with an intensity that made her entire arm feel numb. Around her, the ruins trembled, their ancient walls cracking as the prison's seal fully broke. Maria grabbed Elaine's arm, her voice panicked. "We need to leave, now." "They're coming, Elaine. You've unleashed them." Elaine didn't respond immediately. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon, where massive shapes were emerging. The Vorak were unlike anything she'd imagined. Colossal, amorphous forms that shifted and twisted, devouring the light around them. They were nightmares made flesh, unstoppable and unyielding. Sam stumbled to his feet, his face pale. "This is it. We're dead. You've killed us all." Elaine turned to him, her voice sharp. "I didn't do this to kill us. I did this to give humanity a chance." Sam threw up his hands. "A chance? Against that?" He pointed toward the approaching Vorak, their forms growing larger with every passing second. "We don't stand a chance. We're ants to them." Maria stepped between them, her voice trembling. "Stop. Arguing isn't going to help. Elaine, what do we do?" Elaine tightened her grip on the blade. The weapon felt heavier now, its energy coursing through her like fire. It wasn't just a tool. It was alive, and it was waiting. She could feel its hunger, its need to be wielded. "We fight," Elaine said, her voice steady. Sam let out a bitter laugh. "Fight? With what? That thing in your hand? You think a glowing sword is going to stop an entire species?" Elaine turned to him, her eyes fierce. "It's not just a sword. It's everything. The Elithar made it to hold their will, their knowledge, their strength. They failed because they were afraid to let it take what it needed. But I'm not." Maria stared at her. "Elaine, what are you saying?" Elaine looked down at the blade. It was glowing brighter now, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The voice from before returned, softer this time, almost gentle. "The wielder must give. The blade will take. Only then can it fulfill its purpose." "I'm saying," Elaine said slowly, "that this isn't just a weapon. It's a part of me now. And if I want to stop them, I have to let it take everything." Maria's eyes widened. "No, no, Elaine, you don't have to do this. There has to be another way." "There isn't," Elaine said firmly. "The Vorak can't be contained. They can only be destroyed. And the blade is the only thing that can do it." Sam's voice broke, his usual sarcasm gone. "You don't know what that means. What if it kills you? What if it takes more than you can give?" Elaine met his gaze, her expression calm. "If it means stopping them, then it's worth it." Before either of them could argue further, the ground beneath them cracked open. From the fissures emerged smaller Vorak, their forms writhing as they surged toward the group. Elaine didn't hesitate. She raised the blade, and it erupted with light, cutting through the darkness like a sunburst. The Vorak screeched as the blade's energy tore through them, their forms dissolving into ash. Elaine stumbled, the effort draining her, but she held her ground. "Go," she shouted to Maria and Sam. "Get back to the ship." Maria hesitated, tears streaming down her face. "Elaine, please." "Go," Elaine yelled, her voice breaking. "I'll hold them off. I'll end this." Sam grabbed Maria's arm, pulling her toward the exit. "She's made her choice. We have to go." Elaine watched them disappear into the ruins, her heart heavy but resolute. She turned back to the advancing Vorak, their massive forms blotting out the sky. The blade pulsed in her hand, its voice echoing in her mind one last time. "Are you ready?" Elaine nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Do it." The blade's glow engulfed her, its energy surging through her body. Pain ripped through her, but she didn't let go. She could feel it taking everything, her memories, her strength, her very essence. But in return, it gave her something she had never felt before: power. True, unrelenting power. She raised the blade high, its light piercing through the darkness. The Vorak roared, their forms writhing as the blade's energy reached them. One by one, they began to dissolve, their monstrous cries echoing through the void. The ground beneath her cracked, the ruins collapsing as the energy consumed everything. Elaine stood at the center, her body a conduit for the blade's power. She could feel herself fading, her consciousness slipping away, but she didn't care. This was her choice, her sacrifice. As the last Vorak fell, the storm quieted. The light from the blade dimmed, and Elaine collapsed to her knees. She could barely breathe, her vision fading. The blade, now dull and lifeless, slipped from her hand and clattered to the ground. Maria and Sam returned moments later, their faces pale with fear and grief. They rushed to Elaine's side, but she was already fading, her body weak and frail. Maria cradled her, sobbing. "Elaine, why? Why did you do this?" Elaine smiled faintly, her voice barely a whisper. "Because someone had to." Her eyes closed, and the chamber fell silent. Later, as Maria and Sam left the ruins, the blade remained behind, buried beneath the rubble. Its glow returned, faint but steady, waiting for the next time it would be called upon. Because humanity's story wasn't over. Not yet.